Russia was so paranoid that the United States was going to launch a preemptive nuclear attack against it during the Cold War that it created a dead hand system. What is that? Okay. Would launch all of them without even needing a hand to push the button, hence the name the dead hand. Another example of how paranoid Russia has been for decades is its system that it created called the dead hand. Okay, it's the literal name of it is perimeter. It was this perimeter system, dead hand, was originally reported by a Washington Post reporter named David Hoffman, like in 1999, when he first learned about it, right after the wall had gone down, before we were back to this nuclear threat posturing. But the way the dead hand works is like this. Russia was so paranoid that the United States was going to launch a preemptive nuclear attack against it during the Cold War that it created a dead hand system. What is that? It's kind of like it sounds. They created a system whereby ground sensors would be able to determine nuclear bombs hitting the Russian soil. And if they weren't hearing from the nuclear command and control, so the idea being that the nuclear command and control had been taken out in this preemptive nuclear strike, the dead hand system would launch all of Russia's remaining nuclear weapons, which were like 30,000 at the time, okay? Would launch all of them without even needing a hand to push the button, hence the name the dead hand. So it set up a system to launch no matter what, even if we're all dead. And the idea behind it is kind of part of deterrence. Like, don't you dare launch at us, or even our own dead hand will get you. And so when you think about that, you realize there's a long history of suspicion in Russia. And even more terrifying is I have heard in defense circles, and I haven't been able to confirm it, but I have heard that even now the U.S. Defense Department is thinking of creating some kind of a dead hand equivalent because allegedly Russia never got rid of that system. That's where AI would become a real problem.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point.
The dead AI hand.
Wow, that's a great point. Let's go back into what life looks like.
Okay.
So it sounds like, excuse me if I'm mistaken, it sounds like immediate devastation is about 10-mile radius. Mm-hmm. 100 miles, you're going to feel effects.
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that?
So in the scenario, I have the president making this decision. The 6-minute window is upon him. They're waiting for minute 8, 9 to have the secondary ground confirmation from the ground radar systems. That happens. Sir, it's confirmed. The ICBM is coming to Washington. Then I have a situation unfold between the Secret Service and Nuclear Command and Control, based on interviews I did with Secret Service. Once I realized, wait a minute, the Secret Service's job is to protect the president. As soon as the Secret Service learns, the special agent in charge, the SAC in charge of the president, learns that there's a missile coming at Washington, he's moving the president. Period. Non-negotiable. The Secret Service has a CAT team, counter-assault team. They're kind of like the president's version of ground branch, in essence. A lot of guys go back and forth. So the counter-assault team gets called in by the SAC. Within the counter-assault team, there's an even tinier group called the Element. An Element is a 3-man team. A 3-man team is now going to move the president on Air Force One out of the White House, back off. Right? So it's a standoff. Who do you think's going to win? Who has better equipment?
We do.
The CAT team wins. They move the president, much to the chagrin of the Stratcom commander and everybody else who wants that order. While they are moving the president, and there's a problem because I learned that getting a little into the weeds here, but I'm going to... There's an EMP which will happen with any nuclear. You're familiar with that. Marine One is EMP proof. For listeners, it's an electromagnetic pulse that could very easily fry the electronic system on Marine One, causing it to crash. So the SAC needs to make sure there are parachutes that they can tandem jump the president. They're not in Marine One, a detail I learned. They probably are now, but they weren't then. So the element has to swing by the White House office, grab the parachutes. They need one for the mill aide, one for the guy who's going to jump the president, and one for the SAC. They get them. They get into Marine One. While that is happening, I have in the scenario a second ballistic missile strikes a nuclear power plant in California. A sub-launched ballistic missile. Now, I had Ted Postal, I'm pointing to this, and Richard Garwin discuss with me whether or not it was plausible, whether or not North Korea can actually get a submarine up to the west coast of the United States, because we know China and Russia can. That's a fact. You learn that later in the book. Can North Korea? Ted Postal believes that they can. Garwin says he doesn't think they can yet. I wanted to have that kind of a debate available for readers to think about. You just don't know until you know. I take you through the technology of why Postal thinks it's possible. The North Korean sub-launched ballistic missile fires from a couple hundred miles off the west coast. That takes less than 10 minutes. It's like 6 minutes or something. While the president is deciding whether or not he's going to give this counter launch, and the Secret Service is moving him, the power plant is hit. And when the reason I chose the nuclear power plant to be hit is because it's what's called the devil's scenario. It's worse. It's the worst of the worst case scenario. And I won't get too into the weeds about what happens.
Why not?
I want you to read the book.
Okay.
But no, I shouldn't say it like that. What I mean is the details. You, if you're me, you almost can't tell the details in a 30-second version, because it's so profound what happens. And it's so terrifying. And people would say that they would never do that. Well, there's actually a rule. It's called Rule 42 in the International Committee for the Red Cross that says you must never strike a nuclear power plant. That's even with kinetic weapons. We're not talking about nuclear weapons. And so when I was doing this scenario, people, that were sort of mentors, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, that's against the rules. It was like, well, that's the point. There are no rules if you're going to play nuclear war. And then, this is before the Ukraine war unfolded. And so when Russia has now exploded weapons around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine 8 or 9 times, they have been on backup generator. That's one step away from losing power. That's one step away from a nuclear core materials meltdown. If you strike a nuclear power plant directly with a nuclear weapon, you will have a nuclear core materials meltdown. The land will be uninhabited all the way to Colorado.
Are you serious? No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.